A former tech company executive who's a political newcomer.
I am not a career politician, as most of you know. I'm an entrepreneur.
With a devoted internet following.
Hello, I'm Andrew Yang.
And an army of memes. Andrew Yang is running for president. So, who is he? Yang is the son of Taiwanese immigrants and a lawyer by training, but he made his mark as an entrepreneur. He helped build a college test preparation business that was bought by a big company, and it made him a modest fortune.
Are you ready to build something?
After that, he started an organization that connects college graduates with startups. That job took him across the Midwest and eventually led him to politics.
We automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. And so I was like, why are we not talking about that? So that's where this all started. Developers, 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 developers. Yes! So I like to quote my friend Eric Weinstein, who said, "We never knew that capitalism was going to get eaten by its son, technology." And here in the 21st century, a lot of the economic rules we take for granted have stopped applying. You can build a very successful, profitable company that does not employ many people. And if it does employ people, you don't have to treat them well. You can make them all independent contractors and gig workers. So the things we take for granted have broken down, and we have to start solving this problem by evolving our entire system. I've been a CEO and business person. I met payroll many, many times. I believe that small businesses are the backbone of this economy, but we have to face facts where a generation or two ago, maybe someone would have started a hardware store in their main street, but now with Amazon sucking up $20 billion of commerce every year, 30% of Main Street stores are closing in the next 4 years. 30% of malls are closing in the next 4 years, and being a retail worker is the most common job in the economy. So we have to start facing facts, and the entire socialism-capitalism dichotomy, again, is out of date and is breaking down. We have to try and take the best of both worlds and build an economy that centers around how people are doing. Take the markets and have them allocate resources in ways that would actually help families in Main Street America.
You speak a Main Street theme, but you're also educated at Brown. You went to Columbia Law. You're smart as a lick. But some will just go back and say, you know, the guy's just an elitist.
Well, you know, I just spent time with a trucker in Altoona, Iowa, and I rode around in his truck to see what his day-to-day life was. And I wrote a book, The War on Normal People, that breaks down what's going on in main streets around the country. I spent 6 years working in Birmingham and Detroit and Cleveland. And so showing up in these communities, I just wanted to help. And I've developed a real passion for helping the little guy or gal. I grew up the only Asian kid, like a skinny Asian kid who'd skipped a grade. And so I always felt like I had a thing for the underdog. You know, I'm still a Mets fan to this day, as an example.
Well, that's your problem.
Yeah, I know. It has been a problem. But who's the underdog now in America? It's the Main Street American worker who's getting shoved to the side, and we're just not confronting it honestly.
There was a phase change in the economy around 1970 that I cannot get people to focus on. And, you know, if you look at like GDP, which is a very flawed measure, and median male income, which Tyler Cohen, I think, was the one who pointed out that this is the best version of the argument. One of these things, they're both going up together until like 1970. Yeah. And then one of them flatlines and then it keeps going. And the idea that this is not a structural change that is in every school textbook, and that we don't understand that we've built up 2+ generations of experts lying about what happened. Everyone who cares about this stuff should read a guy named Derek DeSola Price, who was active in the late 50s and started talking about there will be a singularity in science. So he looked at
Price's law.
Yeah, number of PhDs, number of journals, amount of funding. Everything was going up exponentially, and things that go up exponentially cannot continue. And so he predicted this is going to end because there will be too many PhDs per child. And sure enough, that system sort of came apart. So if you look at the period from between 1945 to 1970, you have this growth regime. And everything that got built during that time has what I call an ego, an embedded growth obligation. If it doesn't grow at this rate, it's going to turn pathological. And so we built a ton of infrastructure around this beautiful period of high, broadly distributed, fairly even and stable technologically led growth. And that ended. And then began this crazy period of excuse making where we found every gimmick known to man. And if you want to read an article about this, I think I wrote one called Anthropic Capitalism and the New Gimmick Economy. And so part of the problem is that the concept of jobs as how we feed ourselves rather than creative enterprises or something else, jobs are probably tied to a period of time that isn't going to go on forever, and it's probably weakening as a means of feeding us. So the market was unbelievably brilliant, and then there was a structural change, and now the question is, how do we account for these egos that make embedded growth obligations, that make liars of all of the experts who service the institutions? So the big problem that we're having, the reason we can't wake up from this madness, is that you've had since about 1970 people having to lie to keep the institutions afloat. So
what's the lie?
Well, take a law firm. The idea is you have some number of partners. The partners have associates. All the associates want to become partners. So you have to tell them a story about if you work hard, you will become partners. But when you hit steady state, like the professor wants to have 20 students. The 20 students want to become professors to have 20 students. None of this stuff works anymore.
But the income mobility levels.
Your thing, it's a hidden, what do you call that game?
It's a hidden pyramid scheme.
It's a hidden
scheme.
pyramid scheme.
But the income mobility levels since 1980 have been relatively stable in the United States.
Well, we've been a very rich family trying to figure out ways to live out our days in the style to which we've become accustomed. And we found every kind of gimmick known to man, whether it's offshoring or mergers and acquisitions or self-regulation of markets. Well, the thing is that a lot of this was led by something like science in the form of, let's say, just semiconductors coming out of physics. How much of our current growth has been scientifically led. And now, with Moore's Law, the reason everybody talks about it is it's one of these growth laws that can't go on forever. We're now in a period of such inequality that, humans are very focused on things like status.
Yes.
And so it's not clear to me that people wouldn't be actually happier in a totally different regime.
Well, rather
what if I
have
want the
that
ability to make a 30-year plan?
We want the ability.
Yes. If what I value is the ability to make a 30-year plan, and I want to have some idea of how I'm going to get to my retirement and put kids through school and do all of this. And I want
and then it's this plan.
Yeah.
Right.
So the idea is
the predictability is gone, no question. There's too much volatility.
Right.
But
that's why I said jobs are not going to be the means of redistribution of the wealth.
Right.
The new message is that whatever, I want to tell somebody, very often I hear parents, we have 2 children and one of them is living at home. And I say, okay, let me explain in part why your child may be living at home when you're disappointed that that's happening, right? And so I go through the economics argument. The person feels better. Oh, wow. Or I explain, here's why you're not able to catch up to your parents. It's not all about your personal failure, right? And so the idea is that personal responsibility is something that we need and we also can't have, right? It's too dangerous. You have to do this tailored message. And I think you've been intuiting this. Here's the portion of your life that you're responsible for. And we're going to delineate it. And if your room isn't cleaned up, it's not because of the government.
Right.
That was your point. Saying, and this is, again, you and I are going to have to do this at some point. This is a great country. And, well, if you put your mind to making money, then it may be the case that stick-to-itiveness and passing the marshmallow test and being inventive and creative works. But there are a lot of people who are given a very different message. And they grow up being told, be a good person and work hard. And a lot of this stuff doesn't work the way it used to. It just doesn't. And lying about it offends me. So I want to say, look, if making money is very important, and we need to be able to talk about the role of money. Money is fungible. Everything else is not. So if you make money, then you have lots and lots of options. And we need to give people the idea that that's a good thing to pursue if they have any hope and dream. But it's also the case that fundamentally what your message is you have to make the copay. And the copay is the part of your life that you absolutely control. And if that's out of control, don't expect anyone else to take any sympathy. The thing that I don't like about the personal responsibility issue is that individuals should not be solving the problems of, let's say, tech groups getting together and say, we will not poach each other's employees. That, like, the market has to work for people, not just institutions. And if you're in a sector in which you can make the market work for you, you have this feeling of anybody can do this. And in fact, what you need to do is you need to migrate to these sectors, because there are other sectors where you have, let's say, government intervention, which says we are going to interfere with the free working of the market, or we are not going to take into account that some people produce public goods. And so it's very important to me to understand that some people are coming out of very different circumstances in which it's very unlikely that they will be able to make their world grow and blossom, and that other people of extraordinary ability and high IQ and work ethic find themselves not fighting forces that they don't even understand.
Well, this is the sort of democracy.
When the banks decided that they should be self-regulating with respect to their gearing ratios or the risk, there was one guy who wrote in to this SEC hearing to allow these investment banks to, do the last little bit before 2008 blew up everything. This guy, Len Bollet, who was a computer consultant to banks. It's like one guy in the entire country saw a disaster coming and got involved in this internal game that was by banks, for banks. And so what's very important to me is to understand, when you have bad behavior by institutions, it is pathological to put that responsibility on individual shoulders.
Whiplash! Secondary extract is burnt. Moving to tertiary extract. I have 8 packs, 7 Sierras, 1 package. Package with multiple wounds. The Sierra has gunshot wound to the head. This will be a hot extract. What the fuck? Keep down, man! Keep down! Calm down, brother.
Mikey's up, man. Mikey's up.
Stay down, brother. Calm. Be easy. We're almost out of here. We're almost out of here.